here we go again. And I'm excited. I figure, why not? I'll just have these be separate episodes, at least for these two. And give this a little less time than the black tea. Can I get in focus in time? Beautiful soup color. And again, as I've said, this is now the fourth white tea I've had from Yunnan sourcing on the Dennysodes, and it's just worth noting the liqueur of the tea is very different than those oxidized brown white teas, and so really, all four that I purchased, the processing of these white teas, it is just air drying, but the air, the conditions, the material, where you are, it all influences this color, the complexion of the soup, and of course the flavors. Cheers. Really, surprisingly not crisp. Kind of mellow, mid-toned. Slight hits of grass, but it's got almost a yerba mate earthiness. Very subtle. Really strange, I'll be honest. Nice, really big leaves. Oh, at least a couple of them. See. Let's do this. The leaves are really soft and delicate. Kind of see the almost buddy, what are the little hairs on there? Sorry, everybody, I'm getting some. One sec. All right. A little bit of a yellower liqueur now. Can kind of imagine this looking like a young raw tea. Hints of like round fruit, green tea flavors that are kind of like trying to be crisp, but not. So this is a weird one for me. I'm actually going to pull the lid off here. I'm going to dump this. We're going to go over again because the first time I had this, I also thought, frankly, it was bad. And especially compared to the black tea, which I enjoy so much, the white tea to me just really didn't show up at all. And that is kind of true here right now. I'm going to add some water to cool this. Some just kind of tap water to cool down my kettle here. And I'm going to try to brew this at like 160. For like a minute, or not quite a minute, but something close to that. So bear with me. I'm going to refill up the guy I want to actually do it on camera. I'm going to use a little bit less leaf as well this time. Almost an astringent, excuse me, flavor left in the mouth, which not what I want out of a white tea. And again, this is no dig on the Yunnanese white teas I've had from Scott, but they're not my preference. The Yabao was so different and interesting, and anyway, that loved that. But the other ones that I've had so far, including this one, haven't struck me as like, dang, must order again. And that's again personal preference. Doesn't say, I'm gonna get a little bit more time. Doesn't say too much about the quality of the tea, but rather the drinker itself. In my case, I really prefer, for the most part, those fruitier, orange soup colored flavor notes. Complexion of the tea now is, again, not as yellow, a little bit lighter. Probably using roughly an equivalent amount of tea, maybe a little bit less. Yeah, probably a little bit less. This was brewed for, I don't know, that's probably a minute at 170. Cheers. Much better. Yeah. Giving space for the sweetness. There's an interesting, almost wooey mineral-iness to this that I describe in some wooey oolongs as lacking complete mid-notedness, which is so weird for a white tea. And then having, like with wooey oolongs, especially highly roasted ones, that kind of really basey, complex, dark mineral character. With this, not quite getting into those flavor notes in terms of the base, but sort of like has vacuum taste to me. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Excuse my language, but I don't know. It's a thing that I definitely experience. This is a pass, honestly, and I don't want to sound harsh, because again, I'm so effusive and in love with the black tea version of this. Realistically, probably one factory on Mile High Mountain's production here, but yeah, I don't know. It just isn't. It isn't my profile of choice. Really different. This is definitely, in my opinion, the way to brew this kind of a tea, and probably most of the white teas from Yunnan sourcing that I've had this year as well. Getting into that kind of yellower soup color is not preferred. That last steeping was much more viscous as well. Just had a rounder, fuller depth to it. So even though I'm kind of having a hard time placing the notes of this tea, I think it deserves lower temperatures. Much higher notes of flowers now. Again, not particularly crisp. It's like an 8 of 10 on the volume as well. It's like it's like it takes you to flowers and then pulls you right back out of it somehow. And then there's that kind of vacuum thing where it's like, I thought I was experiencing that note, and then I'm like, what is that? What am I experiencing? I don't know. Texture on this much better this way. I'm gonna get it to 185 and then call it on this one. You know, not every tea has to be a home run. I had hoped for this one to be equally pleasant and interesting, and to detect the subtle nuance of Ilau Mountain from this one. And I to be honest, like I couldn't tell you the through line between the processing of these teas really, or the flavors of these teas in terms of the region. So it'll be interesting to see the comparison as well for the raw tea. I have old black tea and young black tea, and in my experience, the reason that I have the old black tea is because I just finally got around to getting through a huge bin of samples that have just been, or whatever, right, storage. So it's on its way out ultimately. Maybe it'll be just wow me and whoa, aged black tea, but in general, green tea, white tea, black tea, you don't. White tea you can age, but green tea and black tea really not so much. And I prefer fresh white tea. Yeah, nice color. We'll judge the viscosity on this one to tell us probably immediately how far we have left. I'm expecting it to be completely done already, but we'll give it a shot. Again, look at how green this is, right? So is this your preferred tea, white tea, oxidation level? Cool. Then explore these teas much more so than I'm going to in the future. For these ones, I think I can kind of, I don't know. I always want to be surprised, so I'm never gonna say one way or another in terms of definitive, but these ones tend not to be so far my preference. You know, I feel like I'm probably messing this one up. There's probably someone who's a more skilled tea yeah, there's something here. There's flowers. Anyway, sorry, I was saying someone else probably can brew this better than I can. And yeah, because I'm noticing all these different notes here. They're just not harmonious. They taste a little bit bitter to me. There's some astringency there. It almost has a dusty hay vegetal character, and I don't know. It just doesn't even. I can imagine some of those things working together. And for me, doesn't quite pass the bill. So that's my my take on this, on the white tea version of the Isla Mountain production from Yunnan Sourcing. You should give this a shot yourself and see what you think. But I'm gonna stick with this black tea for now. Cheers, everybody.